Okay, I thought I would share with you some of the stuff I've been reading today. I felt inspired to go check out Monjoronson.com, hadn't been there in a while, and grabbed one of the recent readings from their archives that caught my eye. And it was one that had to do with life after death and the astral plane and lower spirits and a lot of things that I hadn't really ever heard of from the Urantia teaching mission channels or anything, at least not very much. So it was interesting to tie things together. You know, here is some Urantia magisterial mission or whatever channels. In this case, it was Daniel Raphael again. He's like, I don't know, I consider him the main Urantia teaching mission, and I guess now magisterial mission channel, whatever. And he channels Monjoronson supposedly all the time. Monjoronson, for those of you who might not have been paying attention, is supposed to be the next big thing. Monjoronson is supposed to be the magisterial son. These things can come, apparently, according to the Urantia book, can come even upwards of thousands of times in the course of a planet's evolution, but very rarely does a magisterial son come and incarnate. Now, there's also the bestowal mission, which is, in our case, what apparently Michael, which is a whole different ball of wax, he's apparently the chief administrator of our whole local universe, which consists of a hell of a lot of inhabited worlds, according to the Urantia book. And for whatever reason, he chose our Earth to make his bestowal, so that kind of sets us apart. Usually one of these magisterial sons does that mission as well. And then it's all about these stages where the planet, as the planet evolves and its people develop, you know, these stages help things along and kind of change how things are happening. But anyway, so Monjoronson is supposedly the next. There's supposedly this magisterial son that's coming, and he's supposedly the one. Before they were saying he's here, he's incarnated, and that was back in like June or something. And then you didn't hear hardly anything. You know, it's like boom, he's here, and nobody's saying hardly anything. And there was still a little activity on the site, but, you know, and I don't know. So apparently it looks like that was overblown, and the reading I was checking out today, flat out says, no, I haven't incarnated yet, and heck, who knows? The impression I get is, if that's really true and he really is here, I mean, he may not be physically incarnated for 1,000 years. I mean, who knows? You know, it sounds like it's going to be soon, but all this stuff sounds like it's going to be soon. My impression is it goes from being soon to being maybe 3 centuries from now. You know, I don't know. But anyway, not that it's not true, but that I fully understand that there apparently are problems with predicting timing and things like that. And of course, as reality occurs and unfolds, then the predictions of probabilities in the future will change as well. So it's interesting to hear purportedly Monjoronson talk about this. And what did he have to say? Well, first of all, he spent quite a bit of time talking about life after death and our understanding of the spiritual realm, and how, and this was just right out of a lot of the psychic stuff, psychic research I've been reading, channeling of various types, communication from entities beyond Raymond by Sir Oliver Lodge, you know, just all this stuff, it all seems to hang together. Andrew Jackson Davis, and then the deep trance channels, Paul Solomon, Casey, Cottrell, Peterson, you name it. And so it's a lot of the same kind of thing, where the people that aren't spiritually oriented, or they don't you know, they're really focused on the things of this world, or tied to their money or their house or relationships or whatever. End up spending a lot of time apparently on this astral plane, and are given ample time to decide whether or not they want to move on. And it was great to hear this tied together with the Urantia stuff, because the Urantia book talks about how souls can be kind of kept in limbo until these stages, major stages occur, and each one there's this adjudication of sorts, and thousands of souls go on. And it just added to the confusion. You know, it sounded like it was communicating something completely different from what we were getting from these other sources. But apparently not. Apparently that's just talking about a lot of these souls that are, you know, they don't see the light and move on for whatever reason. And so apparently after a while, you know, they're given an opportunity to choose for themselves. And then if they don't do that, then they are quarantined, it said. And it sounded like that had to do with these sleeping survivors and people that are basically then unconscious until one of these major events happens, and then a bunch are then they're all like released to the next training area. You know, these mansion worlds or Monjoronson realm, whatever. And if you haven't read much of the Urantia stuff, this probably means absolutely nothing to you, but whatever. Sorry, but so yeah. Then the lady that was asking a lot of questions started asking about so how does this tie together with spiritism and mediumship and stuff, and how we're supposed to stay away from that, and what's bad about that, and what's the difference, and all this stuff, and so the consensus was that, and I just read this at the end of this reading. There's several paragraphs where he keeps trying to talk about the difference between being a channel and being a medium, or what he calls channeling, and spiritism. And the distinction, he says, is that a lower spirit that hasn't moved on, has virtually no enlightenment whatsoever, can take over somebody, can take over a medium, if that medium allows it. Now, of course, a medium can be ignorant, a medium can be full of fear, and depending on those things, can even subconsciously give assent to being taken over. So there can be things that are kind of on the verge of possession, which apparently did take place way back in the day, but ever since the time of Christ, then it supposedly didn't happen. But you can still have this, but he kept saying, realize that you have as much willpower as they do. If you feel some energy like that, just tell them no, they're not welcome, they need to move on, need to move elsewhere, and then they apparently have to, whatever. But and then again, right after saying that, Monjoronson was saying, and so me speaking through this channel is completely different. I'm just speaking through him. He has given assent to me to use like a part of his brain to communicate with speech, but there's two like neural sets of neural activity going on, or someone in tandem or whatever. But he kept trying to point out how that was different, and I don't know, it seemed to me the more he tried to point it out, the more I got confused. So I totally understand this difference between a spirit taking over an entity and then subverting that person's will, and who knows how long, purportedly, presumably it's only as long as the person can actually stay in a deeper trance or whatever. And then this type of conscious trance channeling where, I kept thinking of this Bashar guy I recently discovered, and he's obviously terrific, but it does seem more like that the spirit is taking over more. So I guess in the end, it's taking over to a small degree for the just simple purpose of communicating, and then communicating these elevated ideals, versus just taking over for the sake of existing again within some other entity's body, and so I don't know. A lot of the mediums I see that kind of do that, they seem really corny, and it seems like what they have to say isn't really relevant, and you just get kind of riffraff, or definitely not the kind of coherent messages you get from these other channels. I guess that's how I look at it, is from the content, not so much from the style of delivery or who appears to be taking over. And then, of course, it reminds you, it makes you think of these deep trance channels. It's like, what, are they possessed or something? Well, obviously not. I mean, a lot of these other messages in the TM archives from the Urantia Teaching Mission, they even talk about the value of deep trance channels. And the Urantia book does itself, how there are a select few of those always that are serve an important function, because of the clarity of communication, apparently, that can happen in a deep trance channel, since they are totally unconscious. But again, apparently, that's totally different than a mediumship, where you're giving some lower spirit permission to take over. And I guess by your fruits ye shall know them. Huh? So, and he said in the same reading today, he's like, it's not going to be rocket science. You know, there'll be a lower spirit is going to be uncouth, they're going to be negative and derogatory, and you know, it's not going to be this kind of elevated spiritual stuff you're getting now. So apparently, messing with the Ouija boards, all that really purpose it really serves, apparently, is getting in contact with the lower spirits. Now, that immediately reminds me of the Betty book, where that was this guy's like gateway, where they're like, the spirits said, give the planchet to Betty, and then Betty started communicating. She went to automatic writing, and then switched to like a verbal channeling kind of thing that was like these conscious channels. So maybe there are exceptions to every rule, but I guess in general, what he's trying to say is these elevated celestial entities are not going to use something like an Ouija board to communicate through people. So, but the lady that asked about Ouija boards, in the same breath, asked about tarot cards and reading tea leaves and stuff. And right away, the Monjoronson said, now look, there's a big difference between letting some lower spiritual entity take over, like with an Ouija board, or just using some kind of physical crutch to augment, help facilitate your psychic abilities. He said, remember, your psychic abilities are they're senses that are just like your other five senses. And these are, to reading tea leaves, tarot cards, whatever, the whole spectrum of those kinds of things are simple tools that a lot of people can use to help them. Not that he was like apparently starting a 20-week course on how to read tarot cards, but pointing out that like Casey says, psychic is of the soul. It's not, and in our mainstream media and culture and everything, we often apparently lump all those together. And so, yeah, in the reading, he was apparently attempting to clear up a lot, and it does shed a lot of light on the situation, raises a lot more questions, and obviously we've got a ways to go before we have a really crystal clear perspective on a spiritual realm and everything. And he did say right off, he said, yeah, to give a definitive explanation of all this would fill a volume the size of the Urantia book itself, which is like 2,100 pages almost. So there you have it. But anyway, I thought it was a terrific reading. It was great to hear Urantia people talk about that. On the Urantia site, they mentioned that a lot of this was apparently one of these special sessions. They've been having a lot of these on the main Urantia site. One of the administrators is saying they're going to take some of those down because of a schism that's developing, and apparently there's some kind of out there information that's been coming through. So I don't know, that might be pulled down after a while. I'll probably take the full text and put it up on my own web server or something, so there's a copy of it and you can always read it. But anyway, so yeah, check that out. I thought it was really interesting, and I felt led to give an address on it. So there you have it. Share and enjoy.